Hey guys, Coach K here, welcoming you to another edition of Montreal Hockey Talk. And you're starting to see some changes pre-production. You've got the background in here with my favorite number, of course, that being of Doug Gilmour. It's the number I wore when I played, so it is what it is. He was my favorite player. But lights, I'm adding a few of them, but they're not necessarily the ones that I need. There's stuff coming in. It's been ordered. It should be here in a couple of weeks. So you're going to see as we go along, things are going to get better and better, leading up to our inaugural show coming in September. Now, that's going to probably be on a Sunday, and we're probably going to run it weekly to begin with. But the plan is to get used to how the production works, maybe get a little bit of help here and there, and by and large, come back with the post-game shows with some guests live after each Habs game. But we take it in baby steps. And in baby steps, we start with these videos. Now, what I wanted to do was talk to you guys a little bit about the contract signings the Canadians had. Primarily Caden Guhle, who got a 6-year deal, Arbor Xhekaj, who got his deal, and Justin Barron. We didn't get a chance to talk about it yet because this is new, so I'm going to talk about that today. I'm also going to talk about some of our prospects because people are talking about them a little bit too quickly. And I think we need to pony it down a little bit and get really, really serious about what we expect from this team and the development as we've seen it right now with Jeff Gordon and Kent Hughes. And finally, I saw a graphic from an NHL Network today that absolutely blew my mind. The first name on that list, you're going to look at it and say, not that guy. And I'm going to show you why with my list. And so let's start with the contracts and that of Caden Guhle. 6 years, $5.5 million per season. Well deserved for Caden Guhle. He maybe hasn't been the Iron Man of the Montreal Canadiens as yet on the blue line, but he has shown his ability to move the puck, skate, contribute offensively, and be good in his own zone, being physical when he has to be. I don't know who put it out there. I saw it somewhere online that Caden Guhle doesn't make a good first pass. And I'd like to know what Canadians games this ding-dong is watching. Because if you haven't paid attention to the way Guhle skates the puck, moves it out of the zone, passes it up to the forwards, and generates offense off of transition, you're not watching the Montreal Canadiens. That's the style of play that Marty St. Louis wants from his troops. And so by and large, that's what we're going to get. So stop with the Caden Guhle can't make a good first pass. He can. He's proved it when he played with the Edmonton Oil Kings, and he's going to prove it at the NHL level, given that he's going to play more and more minutes. Mike Matheson, I see him getting his minutes reduced a little bit, opening the door for Guhle to play more, whether it's power play, penalty kill, or at 5-on-5. And I guarantee you, the inability to make a good first pass out of his own zone, that's going to be pushed aside, and you won't have to think about it again. Next on our list, Arbor Xhekaj, Wi-Fi, big fists. He had to be signed. And, granted, he's had a couple of shoulder injuries and he hasn't been in the lineup all that consistently. Went down to Laval for a little bit of a growth spurt, as it were, so that he can learn to be a little bit more mature as an NHL defenseman and learn to stay in his own zone. And he's going to learn over time to pick and choose his spots. And, you look at Chris Nyland's career as an example. Chris Nyland was underrated as far as the offense he could provide. Guy could score on a breakaway. He had good hands. He had a good shot. He could kill penalties, and he could scrap. Doesn't that sound like Arbor Xhekaj to you? He can definitely fight. He's good in his own zone. He can be physical, and he can contribute offensively here and there. So let the kid develop. He's a couple of years out of junior, which most people forget because of his size, and he's a tough guy. So, don't expect miracles right away. Defensemen take normally about 5 or 6 years to fully develop, even at the National Hockey League level. You look at a guy like Mike Kovacevic. He developed and disappeared afterwards, but that's another story for another day. But at the end of it all, when you look at what Xhekaj has been able to do in such a short period of time with Montreal, people love him. He's a popular guy. He's good looking. He's a young kid. His brother's in the system too. He's going to be here for a long time if he continues to develop the same way he is right now. So 2 years, that's the perfect contract for him. Now here's the one that's a little bit of a head scratcher for me. Yes and no. And that's the contract that was given to our friend Justin Barron. Now, granted, Barron's a good defenseman. He's not bad. He has the ability to play well in his own zone, although I find that he oftentimes doesn't look over his shoulder to see what's coming. And so he gets caught out of position, gives up the puck a little too easy, and creates defensive liabilities for the Canadiens in their own zone. That being said, the fact that it's a two-way contract, I can forgive a little bit. And of course, the money doesn't really matter at this point because you're looking at it from an NHL perspective. I'm looking at it from he's not going to be in the NHL perspective. Because if you look at the Canadiens' depth chart on defense, guys that are ahead of Barron are James Struble, Lane Hutson, who's definitely going to be there, Jordan Harris. And so I don't see any room for Barron to start the season in Montreal, especially given the fact that Lane Hutson is either going to end up being a second pair defenseman, probably playing alongside David Savard just to insulate him a little bit, or he's going to be a specialist on the power play, allowing him to get his feet wet in the National Hockey League and provide him with a little bit of minutes. So let's see. I'm not going to really pass judgment, but a 2-year weight contract for Justin Barron, that's okay. And of course, he gets a little bit of a raise because everybody gets a raise when they get a new contract. So it is what it is. Here's the head scratcher and the miscellaneous part of it all. And I don't have a graphic for it, but at the end of the day, who really needs one? I, for the life of me, couldn't understand why the Montreal Canadiens let go of John Kovacevic. And I call him John. That's what I called him when he played with the Hawkesbury Hawks of the CCHL, where I called the majority of his final year of junior play-by-play. And I watched John come into this league, and he was, a tall, lanky kid who really didn't know how to play within his own means, meaning that the size that he was, how lean he was, and so on and so forth. And under the tutelage of his then coach, Rick Dorval, who had him with the Ottawa Junior Senators as well, he learned to play a hybrid style of game where he could contribute offensively, and you can look it up on HockeyDB. I don't have it in front of me, but you could see that he was good offensively and he was good on the defensive side. And the other thing that really switches me up here in the National Hockey League for Johnathan Kovacevic, who I think is going to be a great addition to the New Jersey Devils, is the fact that in 3 years with the Montreal Canadiens, I believe he's a plus 14. And he was never on the ice for fantastic situations against, the tougher opposition. But he didn't bowl badly against them either. And he produced while he was on the ice against them. So, he may not be the guy who's going to break the ice or break the walls down on defense for the Canadiens. But he was certainly a good, serviceable right side defenseman who could have possibly replaced David Savard after Savard is gone this year, because nobody expects Savard to finish the season, given the fact that his contract is up at the end of the year. So, I'm disappointed, but defensively, I think the Canadiens are looking really, really good. And that comes into my next talk, where we're talking about the prospects for the Montreal Canadiens, starting with none other than Lane Hutson. Now, Hutson, I don't expect him to be the guy that's going to play 25 minutes a game to start the season. I see him getting 10, 12, maybe a little bit of power play. Well, especially a lot of power play, I should say, not a little bit. But he's also going to see spot duty. I don't see him being out there 15 minutes a game. I would spot him in maybe 10 to 12. And this way, he gets his feet wet. He shows them what they could do. And in his own zone, he gives them a little bit of a look as to what he's capable of doing at the NHL level. Granted, the kid's got legs like tree trunks, and he could skate like the wind, as we saw at the end of last season. So there's no worries there. And on the defensive side of things, it helps. But remember when Victor Mete was put in that same position by the Montreal Canadiens, making the club right out of junior? Hutson, of course, coming out of the NCAA. He struggled. And I don't want to see that from Hutson, because Hutson is an elite talent. So, and I think the team's going to do it the right way, the way it looks. So I'm not too worried, but I still have my trepidations, because as a young kid, I don't foresee him going to Laval, because that's going to cause an uproar, not only with the fans, but I think with all the coaches on the Montreal Canadiens, because they're expecting him to actually play at the NHL level. So Hudson's going to be a good player for Montreal. He's going to come out there and he's going to have a solid first year, possibly Rookie of the Year material, depending on how much time he gets on the ice. But it's a wait-and-see situation. The exhibition season is going to be key for him. If he can light it up offensively, maybe not so much be defensively aware as yet, But if he can light it up offensively during the preseason, that's going to be the tell as to whether or not he's going to be a Calder candidate. So we'll wait and see. Next up on our list is another defenseman, Logan Mailloux. Now, of course, he's had his issues on the personal side, with the things that he did in junior, which he's paid for in tenfold. So let's not even talk about it. Mailloux's another guy who could bring it offensively and is good in his own zone, skates very well, moves the puck very well, and he's a right-handed defenseman. So he's got that going for him. Whether or not he's going to be able to crack the lineup is another story. Because again, like we said, the Canadians have a lot of depth. Whether it's Struble, Harris, Caden Guhle can play the right side. But they're left-handed defensemen. So the only righty you've got right now is David Savard and Justin Barron. But again, I said Justin Barron's not going to start the season. So in saying that, I think that Logan Mailloux has a very strong shot at making the hockey club, but he's going to have to push, and he's going to have to push hard. And if he does make the club, the odd man out, in my mind, is probably going to be Arbor Xhekaj. He may be, the guy sitting in the press box for those first few games of the season when Mailloux, makes his bones early on in the National Hockey League season. He didn't look too bad in that one game he played at the end of last year, so that also bodes well, given that he didn't have much of a look. But again, another guy whose preseason season is going to be extremely important for his development and where he stands as far as the Canadians are concerned. Now, here's the one that's a little troubling to me, and that's Joshua Roy. Now, Joshua Roy was a 5th round pick, if I remember. Very late rounds. And he wasn't expected to be a top prospect. But, his last year with the Phoenix and Sherbrooke, then his tournament at the World Junior Hockey Championship changed the eyes of everyone. And that happens quite often. Players, they'll get drafted a year before their junior eligibility ends, and lo and behold, they suddenly get comfortable, they suddenly get confident, and they suddenly understand what their role is going to be. And I think that's what Joshua Roy can do for the Montreal Canadiens, is play a specific role. Do I see him on the top 2 lines? Probably not. But I think Joshua Roy, number 1, could be a specialist on the power play. And number 2, he's shown not only in junior but at the National Hockey League level that he's very good defensively on the penalty kill. That is a skill that is very difficult to find these days. With all the offense and the offensive-minded players and skilled players that are coming into the league, a lot of times a player's defensive capabilities are really pushed to the wayside. And I think Roy has that going for him because he's shown that he can be really good in the defensive zone and forechecking without the puck. So it's going to be interesting to see whether or not he cracks the lineup. I think he should. I want to see this team go young. I want to see a few veterans, but of course we have a couple. But, Joshua Roy, I think he's going to be battling with, guys like maybe Josh Anderson or especially Yoel Armia for positions in the lineup. Now, whether or not the Canadians can do anything as far as buyouts, I don't know. But given the fact that they have cap space, the only thing they have to worry about is their 50 contract limit. I think they'll be able to handle it relatively well. They should be okay. And that's really where Joshua Roy is going to be able to sneak in and be able to find a spot on that 3rd line, maybe 4th. But I could really see him on the 4th line. And of course, don't forget, this guy might also end up, in the lineup, given the fact that he's touted to be better than Mishkov. So the Canadians, I think, did a good job by waiting an extra year to get Demidov. So we'll see whether or not he makes the lineup as well. Should he start in Laval? Maybe, but given the fact that he's got another year in the SKA, in the KHL with SKA, St. Petersburg, if he does make the NHL lineup, he's staying. If he doesn't, he's going back. I would make him stay. He's not going to learn anything in St. Petersburg in the KHL. So leave it at that and let's go. Now, here's the one that I want you guys to really pay attention to. And that's a graphic that I found on the internet in regards to the top 10 goaltenders as rated by the NHL Network. And if you look at this graphic, look at the name right at the top. Andrei Vasilevsky. Now, okay, granted, he's had good seasons in the National Hockey League, but It says last year's top 10 goalies. Was he one of the top 10 goalies? No, not really. It wasn't even close, I don't think. And if I look at his stats very quickly, I believe his goals against average was somewhere around, hang on here as I look, it was 2.9 goals against. And he played in 52 games and he's had a 900 save percentage. There are a lot of goalies in this league who've played more than 40 games who have better save percentages. I'll show you that graphic in a minute. Now, there's also a couple of other goalies on this list that I really didn't like. At number 3, you've got Sorokin, who played 56 games. He had a 301 goals against and a 908 save percentage, and you have him ranked as number 3 in the league last year? No. UC Saros at number 5, and the only reason why I think he makes this list is because of the fact that he played 64 games, which is more than 2/3 of the season. So you got to give him a little bit of leeway there at number 5, but statistically, 2.86 goals against and 906 save percentage isn't really a world beater. So no, that wouldn't be for me. And finally, at number 7, you've got Ottinger, Jake Ottinger, who, he had a 905 save percentage and 2.72 goals against in 54 games. Again, very decent numbers, but at the end of the day, it's not world breaking. And the reason why his team was so successful was because of the fact that he had a good team in front of him defensively and offensively. So, the Stars could put the puck in the net, and that bodes well for Ottinger, who made big saves when he needed to, but didn't really have the numbers to justify him being amongst the top 10. Now, here's my list. And it starts right at the top with none other than Connor Hellebuyck. Hellebuyck had the best numbers, as you can see, of all the goaltenders playing more than 40 games. And, feel free to go up and down this list. I think I've been very, very fair with the goaltenders. I can't really see the list because it's on my production computer. It's a little bit far away, but let me see here if I can remember who I did and where. Sergei Bobrovsky at number 3 is an obvious one. I've got Decord on there as well from Seattle. He was fantastic for the Kraken. I got Pyotr Kuchkov from Carolina at number 5. And the one guy that you see on this list that you may have an issue with, but you shouldn't, is former Canadiens goaltender Charlie Lindgren. Despite the fact that the Washington Capitals missed the playoffs, he was fantastic in goal, and his stats prove it. So, I don't know who's, greasing Vasilevsky's rod over at the NHL Network, but Tampa Bay Lightning, they're yesterday's news. So how about we stop kissing their ass until they become a better hockey club? There's no more Stamkos there anymore. Victor Hedman, he's starting to slow down a little bit on defense. They traded away Xhekaj. They're not the team that they used to be. So, despite the fact that John Cooper is a very good coach, don't expect miracles from them. So at the end of the day, guys, that's my rant for today. You've got 3 contracts that I think were great and a defenseman that shouldn't have never left in Johnathan Kovacevic. You've got 4, not 3, but 4 prospects that I think are going to be in the NHL lineup that are going to push the veterans really, really hard. And then you've got the stupid list from the NHL Network that I'm going to post on all the socials so you can see it clear as day. And that's it for now, guys. Of course, I'll be coming up with more, including an outro for these videos as I go along. But I do work full-time, so it takes a little bit of time. But that's it for now, guys. I'll see you next time.